Cosmic here, welcome back to the channel, and today we have a Union Arena match between Hunter x Hunter and JJK, and just going to talk about some lines throughout the match, and a lot of these in the future will probably just be kind of live table talk version, but at least want to explain some of the early plays as we're getting into Union Arena. It is a newer card game for a lot of us, and we just want to try to explain some of the setup turns that you'll see. So T-Max starting off with a very strong start from JJK, pretty much the ideal one. Early on, you're setting up your energy line to make sure you can play out the rest of your cards. But opening up that discard into the Sukuna finger is going to be really important for the late game strategy for JJK. Now for Hunter x Hunter, you are playing a slower deck. The Kurapika gets up to 5k at the top end, which is great for blocking, but you do have to spend your early turn plays trying to do the filtering, which is really important in kind of these top end heavy decks. And the Rio allows us to bounce it back to our hand to get even more cycling and filtering going on. Panda is kind of really special in this matchup in particular because it allows you to have the impact negate, which is basically trample or piercing coming from other games. But going on to the green side, this is what we really love about seeing the energy extenders. It allows us to float an extra energy to go into Neon, which is one of the most important cards in the green Hunter x Hunter deck because it gives you 2 energy, which is really important, and then allows you to play something for free. Basho here is actually the perfect card that we want to see early game because we know that we're losing something in the back line because of the effect. We get a damage in, and then because of step, if we are able to keep it on the field, it then goes back into our energy line and allows us to hit that very, very sweet number of 7 energy, which is like the biggest requirement for the Hunter x Hunter deck. Now, T-Mac and I have been playing this matchup quite a bit as we're just trying to get ready for Union Arena, so he is a little bit used to this play pattern and knowing what to expect. So we are going to most likely eat a removal here very early on while he continues to set up his back line for those raid targets. So there's the Divergent Fist that I had mentioned, making sure that we're keeping our opponent off of the 7 energy, which is really key here. So we see a very aggressive Sukuna early on. Now, JJK does have the option to play a little bit slower, but within this matchup in particular, because Kurapika goes to 5k and can really try to block out a lot of the early stuff until they find that second Sukuna finger to give 5k and impact, it can be kind of hard to close out the game later on. So you do want to get that early chip damage where you can, and then of course the removal itself is a bit limited. Now there's a Kurapika going to our hand for our raid target, which is going to be really important, so he knows that we're going to be able to target the Sukuna, but he does have the 2 damage here right off the bat very early on. Active triggers are really fun if you hit the right sequencing for them, but not necessarily as good because you do need something on the field. So blocking in this game does become really important in terms of how you sequence it, and probably won't get into too much in this game in particular where you're going to see it, but a lot of the actions that you take, be it becomes the back line and making sure you have the energy requirements for if you hit a raid versus your blocking sequencing can be really important. So Kurapika to the back line to give us 2 more energy to go up to 7, as I mentioned, to go into then the raid Kurapika, which is going to get Sniper, which is super important in this matchup because it is basically target attack, or effectively allows me to target his Sukuna and remove it, as well as having impact 1, so we still get to deal damage. Kurapika does take a bit to get online. It is a turn, at least a turn slower than any other raid targets out there that we're going to see early on in Union Arena, but it is very powerful when it comes down. And then the other Kurapika, something to think about as you get to more of these. Now we're entering what I'd call like the mid game of Union Arena very quickly. We have our energy line established. Now we're just playing threats. Is sometimes it's okay to just play out that early blocker to the front line. Yes, they could have a removal. Yes, they could have interaction, but do keep in mind that your units are going to stand at the end of turn. So it is very important to get that blocker online. And also this Kurapika does allow us to filter. So here comes down the second Divergent Fist, getting rid of our raid Kurapika, which again, being 5k is really important to be able to block with, and as well as being aggressive with and try to chip away at his life as well. But Divergent Fist being a 5k removal is very good. And then he also has the raid UG here to hit a 4k bounce to my hand, just a complete board reset and very, very strong turn for the JJK player. UG coming across, being a 0-cost raid target. I do love about this game is that all of your raid targets and your raid fodder, or the 0-cost that we just revealed, are always going to go to your hand. So it always feels like you can play what your strategy was. You never get just totally RNG'd out by it being in your shields or life. So that is one thing that I really do like about this game. Whatever your key kind of boss monster is, you do get to play it. So here we're just going to go ahead and promote because we know that we need that back energy line open. So Kurapika just comes to the front. and we still have that other one in the back giving us the double energy. So Zep, again, one of my favorite cards we saw earlier. Just getting that extra filtering is super important for making sure that you can find your key threats in this deck, because you do have a lot of setup cards like Neon or Leo Prio, where you just get the double energy, but then seeing multiple copies of them are maybe not as good. So you definitely want to discard them, or just discard extra copies of Zep, because you don't need to filter anymore and you only have like one backline slot to work with. 5 energy Kurapika gets the impact 1, allows you to cycle for those threats. So in terms of just like mid-game cards that are really good, getting this other Kurapika online, which again is just going to be a blocker, allows us from some filtering. But now we have the Emperor's Time, which is going to act as a removal and allows us to draw cards. So personally, I do like the other specials for other IPs or other even deck colors a bit more, because it is just targeted removal if you hit the condition, where this one relies on having a Kurapika. You do get to draw the card, which is really important in our deck in particular, because again, you have to find that raid target as quick as you can, but we are able to still get a removal here. And now T-Mac is going for the draw and filtering. So we do see one Sukuna's Finger down there in the graveyard already. He's really trying to find the second one so he can get the impact online and really start to pressure our life total, or again, just trying to find some other good backline options. One thing that we've noticed kind of going back over this as I was editing it is that his backline sequencing didn't line up really well in this matchup, and I also didn't really get a perfect hand either by any means. So knowing how to play out of those situations and when to free up a back row spot so you can play other energy units, energy focus and units I should say, while not completely restricting how much energy you have on a turn, is super important. So we again see another Sukuna coming online now. Again, I think it's just the one finger still in the graveyard, but just an absolute monster of a card, which again does filter for itself. It does allow you to draw extra cards, so you are likely to get those other effects online. And here's where we're noticing that it doesn't have the impact, it just has the power bonus. So we're going to fix our life total. We very much do have to take a just kind of chump block here. One thing that we do mess up in this game, and this is kind of more like an advanced tip, you always want to stay at 2 life if you know that your opponent has an impact unit, because you never want to set yourself up in a position where you just have to take that impact and lose automatically, because they're going to be able to push through that damage. So here we do see the Neon giving us a little bit of an extra boost here. Again, the 2 energy of the back row is really important, but then getting that extra unit and being able to be aggressive in the front line is why Neon is just such an MVP for Hunter x Hunter. So we do see another Emperor Time giving us the Sniper, which again is that target attack. It's going to allow us to draw a card, and this Kurapika does have impact himself, so we are still able to chip through that damage where we weren't able to previously because it didn't have impact inherently. So now this is me just going through the triggers of Kurapika. Technically has an on attack that lets me choose, again, put that card top or bottom, because we know that we're going to draw into it off of Emperor Time, and then the trigger would resolve if our opponent has something. So just trying to choose what we're going to draw or not here. He does get the Sukuna's Finger, which does go into the trash here, does get him to draw a card. And now we do have his effects being online, and now it's going to be a little bit scarier than what the blue JJK deck can be doing. That said, we did see double Neon, which is really good for us, but at the same time, we've only seen one of our raid fodders or raid units so far, which is the key way to kind of close out the game and make sure that we have enough of a defensive wall built up that we don't get bodied by the Divergent Fist, Sukuna's just good old impact, or a lot of the UG raids being able to bounce our board, as we saw kind of earlier in the game already. So we are really trying to dig and find those 5k Kurapikas as quickly as possible, because they just are going to help us close out the game, and Neon can help us get there. So here's where we start to see kind of a bit more filtering. Sukuna's Finger is interesting because you do have the option to use it as a play extender here, where yes, you do have to pay a life, but it does allow you to combo out some additional turns if you really want to. Now, this is where he was starting to notice that the pacing of the game, because I haven't seen a lot of my raids early on, like they have to be coming up pretty soon. So T-Mac knows that he has to close out this game pretty quickly, and I think this is where we see one of the mistakes here in a little bit, where it's like we really need to stay at 2 life, knowing that you're you have impact in the deck, because otherwise you just lose to your opponent playing that raid with impact. So I mess up as well this game. Again, it's very early on, we're still trying to learn it, but that's just like a very easy pro tip to learn going forward. And then also here, I would have liked to see the one of the pandas moving up, just give it the impact negate, again, for protection standpoint, then also freeing up a backline spot, which can be really good. Domain expansion, the AP extenders are something that we see time and time again in every deck. You always run 4. The final trigger is very good, but this is where you can have some absolutely explosive turns that's really difficult for your opponent to come back from if you see multiple of these in a row. Now, I did not get any in this matchup, but we are still able to pull off some pretty big plays thanks to Neon again, but otherwise, T-Mac is just going through and trying to find pieces. Now, here's where he uses the second one, which really puts him down to, you know, just 1 life, which is really, really rough if you don't have that impact negate. So I think if you were going for this play, you know, the Panda had to come up to the front, but otherwise just trying to be as aggressive as possible, lining this up, getting the UG to bounce a card to kind of clear up the board, try to figure out where he can get that extra damage in, and just kind of close out the game that way. So here's where we're going to kind of go back and forth on a couple plays, and another thing I'm going to call it, he did bottom deck a card instead of putting it to the discard, or I think it's called sideline now in the North American version, but you need to make sure that those extra cards are going to the trash because the JJK deck can churn through a lot of its deck very fast. So you can accidentally mill out yourself sometimes, not as common, but something to be aware of as well. So here's we're just kind of trying to do the math. We were kind of talking through the plays, and I cut out a little bit of the footage because we were having a lot of back and forth, but just again, trying to decide how does he get that extra damage to close out the game and make sure that I do not get an extra turn because he went down to 1 life and he knows that I have the impact Kurapikas, which could end the game on the spot. So another mistake, again, on my end that I've kind of been alluding to up to this point is that my blocking sequence was pretty terrible because we have to take the early blocks and let the Sukunas hit because they have impact at this point. So that is a missequence by my end, but we do get a little bit lucky here with the special, which is able to just kill off one of the Sukunas. So we do actually get to stabilize and not get punished for those impacts. But again, very scary, not much else we could do because it has the 5k to push through for damage. And that's a really great showcase of, yes, Sukuna's Finger, you might not often use it for the effect to take a life and extend out your plays, but it can lead to insanely explosive turns if you match it with an AP extender as well. So here's where you start to see, okay, what's in my hand? I really had to just promote some stuff. I need to get some extra swings in. And what I'm really looking for is I just have to find a way to get another raid target, which is just how do I play another Neon effectively, because Neon does allow us to look at the most amount of cards. I think I had a Water Divination, which is just another card that says, hey, draw some. I think it's like draw 2 if I remember correctly, but it just didn't do enough. And here's where I was like about to pick up my graveyard just to count, and I'm like, wow, we have only seen 1 and we filtered through so much. So this Neon just has to hit. So yes, we do find the Neon into the Kurapika, which is going to give us the Sniper, which is going to remove something, as well as the impact, or we could have just rested it, and that is going to be a win for the Hunter deck, but a very close game. Again, if that Panda would have came up to the front line, probably would have been a little bit different, but we do get the win here off the Kurapika. So thanks for watching. Let us know what you want to see in the next Union Arena video. Till then, take care.